Internal cable routing, that's the topic for today, but not for the good reasons. I'm going to talk about the negatives for internal cable routing and also what's going on here. What's with all the zip ties? What's with that? I just forgot that actually, but there are zip ties and I'm going to tell you why, and it has to do with this. First though, the benefits of internal cable routing. I don't proclaim to know all of the benefits, but I can tell you one of them is the clean look. This just looks better. If you don't have, just disregard these. If this was just those cables, you would have a nice clean look all the way to the back. And you know, that's modern. That's a way, at least on these big box bikes, that I can spot a modern designed frame versus something that's legacy or an old design that they've rebirthed. If I see cables not routed internally, routed on the bottom, underneath this top tube, or heaven forbid, on top of the top tube, I know it's an older legacy design or just a planner that hasn't bit into the internal cable routing thing, but it does look good. I mean, it's streamlined, especially if you have a frame that has smoothed welds, it looks just really good. I like this, the provisions for dropper posts and so on. The looks, I would say number one. Number two, protecting your cables and lines, especially hydraulic brakes like I've upgraded this bike with. Internally routing those means they're not exposed to rocks if the bike crashes or falls over. If you're straddling the bike, you're not pressing on it. So protection, a second reason to have internal cable routing, and I'm sure there are many others, but I would say the top two are a streamlined design and protection. You know, I'm going to add a third thing here, and that's expandability. You can easily build a frame to be expandable, just like this one on this Ozark Trail Ridge 29. It came from the factory with open ports. I could put a dropper post on this and still have some expansion room. So 3 things there. Looks, protection, and expandability, all from a simple internal cable routing setup on a frame. Now let's get to the downsides, the one major downside. If you do want to upgrade and you are an at-home upgrader like me, routing internal cable routing for hydraulic disc brakes. You have to go all the way from back here into, and you see I've got the factory right there. There is a block there that goes inside. It comes out right here, goes back in, and all the way up to here. You know the thing about hydraulic disc brakes? They have hydraulic fluid. So if you are an at-home upgrader, like a lot of people that watch this channel are, and you buy a set of hydraulic disc brakes, and yeah, look at that. I have the other one on. If you watched my recent video, I only had this. Now I have the full set, and that's why it's set up like it is, and why there are zip ties running down, because of this internal cable routing. One thing I'm bad at is bleeding hydraulic disc brakes. If you buy a set, they're going to come pre-filled. Just bolt them up and go. If you have external cable routing, that's easy. It's literally bolt and go. In this case, 2 bolts, usually just 1. And then you run along your external routing as normal, an easy upgrade. But if you have internal cable routing, this rear, actually this is the front. See, Scooter's already messing with me. This is the rear. This runs around and into the internal cable routing. As a matter of fact, look at that. I left this just for this video. That is where the rear cable went in here to the rear brake, and it routes around and into this internal cable routing and then down. If I wanted to route this internally, I'm going to have to disconnect this. There's hydraulic brake fluid in here, or mineral oil in here. That's going to leak out. Then I have to refill and bleed, purge and bleed myself, which I'm not good at. A lot of people aren't. Plus, a lot of people don't have the ability to run. There's a special tool to be able to run lines internally. And that's not going to work if you don't have that special tool. Or, well, some people do it certain ways, but for me, I haven't had good luck. Let me add this in here before someone comments, and rightfully so. They'll say, well, there's tubing in here in this internal cable routing, so it runs straight down via an internal tube. Not always. You see here, I have a hex wrench I'm putting in, and I'm spinning around There's no tube in there. As a matter of fact, there's usually not a tube. That's kind of an exotic thing, that you'll have an internal tube with this internal cable routing, or at least a more expensive thing. I don't think I've seen it on a bike under 700 bucks, or maybe there was one that was 600. But nope, no internal tubing. Just a port and then the frame where everything runs. So I run, at least in this case, because I wanted the brakes on now rather than waiting, or rather than spending 60 bucks at the local bike shop to do it, I just zip tied. And I made external routing here on my internally routed Ozark Trail frame. And believe it or not, I've seen a lot of people do this. I'm not the only one, and that's, a big downside. You buy a nice swanky new bike like this Ridge 29, and then you buy the upgrade parts to get it upgraded, and it comes to that internal cable routing, and all of a sudden, it doesn't look so upgraded, does it? It just looks, well, I would say worse than a bike with external cable routing, even if you didn't like external cable routing, but this does work. I will say this does work. So in a pinch, that could be done, and we'll talk about these brakes in another video. For now, what's your thought on internal cable routing? Do you like it? I've had people comment and say they actually don't like it for this very reason. The upgradability is a problem for the average person that's wrenching on their bike, that's not a bike mechanic, doesn't have bike mechanic tools. And then you're forced to take other measures. So what do you think? Would this be an absolute no-no? How many of you have a problem with that? So what do you think? How many of you say this is an absolute no-no? How many of you say, do what you got to do, man? Get your bike on the trail. As long as you're riding, that's what's important. Comment below and let me know which side you're on. And in the meantime, I'm going to be testing these out further. Actually, I'm already working on a video. We're going to talk about bucklos. And then we're going to just talk about hydraulic brakes in general, but specifically these hydraulic disc brakes. Because of their model number, MT200, little interesting, the model number choices. But let's talk about that in another video. For this video, comment with your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.